13th September 1997. Super League preliminary final, Saturday night, Shark Park. Sharks, Raiders. 54th minute. After being the better side throughout, Cronulla just conceded. Still up 8 points to 4. A turnover in the next set sees Canberra again in the Sharks' red zone. A shift to the left from the scrum sees Brett Mullins get on the outside of opposite centre Andrew Eddingshausen and put Albert Fulavai away down the left. Fulavai beats Matt Rogers on the outside and with a clear passage sets sail for the northwestern corner. He thinks he scored. A smile comes across Fulavai's face. In the blink of an eye, it looks like Cronulla has just given up an 8-point lead. Then a looming figure glides across the field. That figure is none other than legendary fullback David Peachey, also with a huge smile on his face, who duly buries Fulavai into touch. A heaving and vocal Shark Park reacts in simultaneous relief and joy. Can Cronulla go on with the job? A third grand final appearance 30 years after their entry into the top grade beckons. Welcome to another episode of Classic Cronulla Chronicles. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the ET Stand, the Cronulla Sharks fan podcast, where we let our talking do the football. Yes, a bit of a late episode this week on the eve of our prelim final against the Panthers. We're watching or looking at a corresponding fixture from our history. We've only had 4 prelim wins in our history: 73, 78, 97, 2016. We'll cover 73, 78, and 2016 at a later date. We're going to go back and have a look at 1997 Super League for the first time this series. I'll rip straight into this one. And so Sharks, Raiders, Shark Park, interesting venue for a preliminary final. I don't think that would happen in any other competition, but Super League, they were different times. The form guide going into it, the Sharks were hot on the heels of a loss in the major semi-finals. The winner would progress to the grand finals, the old top 5 system in a 10-team competition. They lost 34 points to 2 after being down 30 points to 2 at halftime to the Broncos. Bizarrely, that game, Brisbane home game in Townsville. Not sure the history behind that. And all my research couldn't indicate why that game was played there when pretty much all the other matches were played at respective home grounds, including the grand final. So Sharks lost that one 34 points to 2. They had won quite a few games in a row prior to that, though. You'll see some interesting teams there. So at 22 points to 18 in the major preliminary semi-final, as it was known as first week of the finals. That was 2v3. Which the winner of that would go through to play the team that came first, the Broncos, for a spot in the grand final, while the loser would play the winner of the 4v5 match, which was between the Panthers and the Bulldogs. And the Raiders then obviously duly won that one. We'll go through that in a second. It's the Panthers. But so Sharks have beaten the Raiders at home first week, the finals 22-18. Prior to that final round of the regular season, they beat the Hunter Mariners 28-16, beat the Cowboys 34-12, and the Adelaide Rams in their inaugural season of only 28 points to 6. The Raiders, they beat the Panthers, the winner of the 4v5 match 32-12 the week before. They lost the Sharks in that return fixture 18-12. Those stats are incorrect there. The 5 wins, 0 losses. You can see I hadn't updated that one. They had 4 wins, 1 loss. Both teams had 4 wins, 1 loss heading into this one. Lost 18-22 to the Sharks. Beat the Western Reds 36-16. Adelaide Rams 58-16. North Queensland Cowboys 22-14. Super League, different sides, different times. We'll cover all Super League relevant factors in the talking points. And I'll give a few shout outs to some other podcasts that can give you more information if you're interested in the what, the why, the how that was Super League. But moving into the team list now, it'll be a snappy episode. You'll see very strange. This is another strange thing about Super League. They had squad numbers, players' names on their backs. A bit like American sports, a bit like, I suppose, soccer these days, English Super League or English Premier League, and the like. But number 1, the fullback. Number 21, David Peachey. The wingers, number 45, Matt Rogers, and number 17, Jeff Bell. The centres, number 3, the captain, Andrew Eddingshausen, and number 33, Russell Richardson. The halves, conventional numbers here, number 6, Mitch Healy, number 7, Paul Green. The front row, number 40, Jason Stevens, number 9, Dean Trister, number 8, Danny Lee. The back row, number 31, Chris McKenna, number 11, Craig Greenhill, number 13, conventional lock, Tawera Nikau. The bench, number 24, Sean Ryan, and number 38, Les Davidson, number 18, Adam Dykes, and I'll just move my cursor there, number 4, a conventional number, Paul Donaghy. While for the Raiders, number 2, Ken Nagus was the fullback. Hark back to the Sharks for a sec. Coach was John Lang, of course, and there's a picture of good old Langy there. So John Lang, the coach. The Raiders, Fullback number 2, Ken Nagus. The wingers number 5, Noah Nandruku, and number 18, Albert Fulavai. The centres number 1, Brett Mullins. Number 16, David Boyle. The halves number 6, Laurie Daly. Number 7, the captain, Ricky Stewart. The front row number 11, Brett Hetherington. Number 17, Luke Prittis. Number 10, Luke DeVico. The back row number 20, Jason Burnham. Number 3, Jason Croker. Number 13, Bradley Clyde. The bench number 9, Simon Wolford. Number 19, Toddy Payton. Number 21, Andrew McFadden. And the 17th man, unused. Could not find on Rugby League Project. I don't know if they didn't name a 17th man or didn't use them. None of the research I could find who that person was, but that was the case. Only 16 players used by the Raiders. The coach, Mal Meninga. That spelling of Toddy Payton on my side there is incorrect. Should be Todd Payton. He was a late inclusion. A very, very young Todd Payton showed his wares. Looking at those sides just broadly, I'll drill down to them shortly, but the Raiders, obviously, they'd made all those grand finals in the early 90s and late 80s, won plenty of them too, won the 94 premiership as well, a tail end of their sustained success, but they were one of the key draw cards to the Super League. Them and the Broncos were the key teams that the competition was built around. The corresponding competition, the ARL, was jokingly called a Sydney comp, with a couple of South Queensland teams being the Crushers and the whatever the Gold Coast team was known as at the time, while the Super League had a Australia-wide flair. But the Broncos and the Raiders definitely had been caught for salary cap issues in the past and had pretty stacked squads. Players like David Boyle and Albert Fulavai, obviously not household names, same too as Jason Burnham. Not the household names that you think of for a classic Raiders side, but still anything that's got Daly and Stewart in the halves, even Kenny Nagus, Brett Mullins, and Noah Nandruku in the back line. They were premiership winners for them. While for the Sharks, I'll go through the changes in the lead up. Andrew Eddingshausen had been out the week before with a virus, a severe virus, according to the Dr. Peter Maloof. But John Lang in the post-match press conference had stated that ET was not going to create a 30-point difference to the Sharks after they got towed up by Brisbane. So he was back into the side. Paul Donaghy dropping back to the bench, looking at that. So the outs were Brian Lamoutia and Nathan Long, both dropping out. The ins were Andrew Eddingshausen and Paul Donaghy, And the changes, so Jeff Bell moved from centre to wing, Les Davidson second row to bench, and Craig Greenhill moved from the bench to the second row. Whilst for the Raiders, changes, they lost Quentin Pongia, David Furner and David Atkins, with Todd Payton and Andrew McFadden both coming into the bench, with those changes being Jason Croker moved from centre to second row, Bradley Clyde from second row to lock, Jason Burnham from lock to second row, Luke DeVico from bench to front row, and David Boyle from bench to centre. So fairly evenly matched sides. This will be the fourth meeting between the two sides. The Sharks won in round 1 at the Sydney Football Stadium. It was a home game for the Sharks. They won that one convincingly. They lost to the Raiders in Canberra that year. Then they won week 1 at the finals at Shark Park. And then just 2 weeks later, we're playing again at Shark Park. Bit of Groundhog Day, but winner goes through to the grand final. The match itself, an early penalty goal, Matt Rogers. What was immediately evident on the coverage, and we'll put the link in the show notes, on the description, the link to the YouTube replay, was Shark Park seemed heaving and noisy. It's great to see an old Shark Park. The crowd was about 18,000, so not quite the ground record that we would see in following years, up to 22,000 there, but a great turnout, sold out plenty of time in advance, and really, really behind the side. Imagine having a prelim there these days. It would just be crazy. But I do, hot on the heels of the win at Allianz over the Cowboys on the weekend, and all of our history in 2016, I do like big stadium success as well. Anyway, Matt Rogers with an early penalty goal, up 2-0. That was courtesy of an offside penalty, about 30 out right in front. And then shortly thereafter, there was a bomb put up, and Ricky Stewart, I believe. So looking at it now, Ricky Stewart took out ET in the contesting the bomb. It wasn't a disruptor. It was just a good old-fashioned just taking off the ball. And the Sharks got a penalty goal from wide out. Rogers kicking from about 20 out, wide out on the right side, northeastern corner, so in front of the old beer hill. Nailed it from the sideline to lead 4-0. And it was a pretty tight affair. Both sides were committed, and there was a strong northeasterly. So the Sharks were running into the breeze in the first half, and they were taking any points they could get. The commentary team was Ray Warren, Peter Sterling, Gary Belcher, which was an interesting mix. And one of the Super League rules that became evident very early on in this match with the 2 quick penalty goals was that the team that concedes gets to receive the ball back, so that the scorer would kick off. So each time the Sharks would kick off, and actually that's what allowed them to create some pressure. They forced an error straight away, but you'll see later in the match the Raiders do the same in return. The match carried on. Sharks had plenty of good yardage in their sets, a few errors from the Raiders early, some good defence from Cronulla, and we turned it into points in the 18th minute. It was a bit of a backline play. Got the full readout here. So Green almost slipped through from 20 metres out. Quick play the ball, compressed defensive line. We were wide on the left. We shifted right to attack towards the Beer Hill corner again. And it was Peachey to Healy to ET, who put a move to get on the outside of Mullins and did a flick pass that everyone talks about, the Gidley to Tahu flick. This was the Gidley to Tahu flick before that was a thing. ET to Rogers, who dives into the corner. Had plenty of work to do and got there. And Ray Warren in commentary said the ET Rogers are a centre wing combination as good as I've ever seen. They are almost synchronised. So it was good to see. Rogers, unfortunately, unsuccessful with the kick. It seemed to be affected by the wind. And Sharks were up 8-0 after about 20 minutes, which was good. Running into that stiff breeze. Moving on. One point that I thought, or one new rule that I thought came out of Super League, but my research indicated later, was it was an ARL introduction, not a Super League introduction, was the 40-20 rule. Ricky Stewart kicked 2 40-20s in the first half, but neither resulted in a Sharks feed because the Super League did not have that rule. We'll talk about other new rules in Super League shortly, outside of the kicking after points thing. Other ones too, including the zero tackle, the video ref, and the like. Sharks held on to lead 8-0. The Raiders weren't without their opportunities. They just didn't have enough class to hold the ball and sustain pressure, while the Sharks forced 4 to 5 repeat sets from just Green and Healy rolling into the in-goal and getting a repeat set. Quite a few bombs causing the Raiders trouble as well. So moving on to the second half, and Sharks were running south with the breeze, which is unusual for Shark Park, having a strong northerly rather than the southerly. So Sharks had a huge yardage set, put a big bomb up. Rogers versus Nagus, taken by Nagus. Jason Croker was taken off, quote unquote. Peter Sterling stated he was in Disneyland. Shortly afterwards, he was back out there to play a starring role. You won't see that these days with the HIA rule, but again, looking back at these old games, it's interesting to see, I suppose, how the approach to injuries, head injuries and the like has changed so much in recent times. But this, we're talking, we're close to 30 years on from this game. It's quite a while now. The Raiders were starting to get some good possession here. A break from Canberra by Todd Payton, and then unfortunately an error for Canberra, A great counter attack by Rogers, who flies down the right touchline, puts a grubber back inside, and Peachey is chasing, and Bradley Clyde gets back there and takes it, and Peachey cleans him up about 5 metres out. So almost a Raiders try, end-to-end stuff, almost a Cronulla try. You could see that every play meant so much, and after the Sharks got out to a big lead in the first final against the Raiders a few weeks prior, Raiders had clawed their way back. The commentators were saying that this seems similar to that, but the Raiders seemed to be holding on, and if they were next to score, it would be essentially game on, despite a bit of dominance early from Cronulla. So unfortunately, that is what would happen in the 51st minute. So a one-on-one steal occurred. Paul Green, so a one-on-one steal in defence got Raiders on the attack. Paul Green was caught out of line, up and in basically, and was exposed by Daly to Mullins, who went straight into the backfield and put Jason Croker through backing up on the outside, and Croker brought it around and put it basically next to the post. So 8-4, about to be 8-6, and Laurie Daly is known for his missed kick in Origin, but this one was something else. He put in the sand. It was just to the left of the uprights, and he somehow sliced it, and it hit the right post as he's looking at it. So basically sliced it completely, 8-4. And the commentators were saying how much of a difference Rogers was versus Daly. I don't know who the traditional kicker was for Canberra that year, but Daly was certainly not the first choice. And I'm saying goal kicking would have a big impact. It certainly would. 8-4 before we rolled onto the event that I spoke about at the start, where it looked like Cronulla personified was going to happen again in that. So Sharks kick off back to the Raiders again. And Raiders kick off to Sharks. So Sharks had the ball after conceding, and then there's an error almost immediately afterwards. So the Raiders immediately on the attack, and then from the scrum go left, and that's where Fulavai was going down that basically saloon passage. Had a smile on his face. The commentators were talking about it. He thought he was in. Everyone thought he was in, and Peachey just came from nowhere and just hammered him over the sideline, much to everyone's relief. That would have been 8-all. Daly's, I suppose, previous attempt, you'd think he wouldn't kick it from the sideline, but still, if that resulted in an 8-all in essentially a minute and a half, anything could have happened. The Sharks steadied the match, got back a bit of control, unlucky not to score a few times themselves, finally got a penalty goal in the 71st minute for a high shot from about 25 out, right in front to put a 6-point lead. And the Raiders were playing catch-up football at about that point. They were indicating the errors were about 16-8 to the Raiders. So the Sharks had better ball control. It did look like a slippery, dewy night there. And the Sharks held on and almost scored with the final touch of the ball too. Instead of wrapping it up, they ran down the left and got Russell Richardson put a kick forward, and it was grounded just by a Raiders player running back. So that would have been, I suppose, 14-4, 16-4 if they scored that one, which may have been a bit more indicative of the match, but the Raiders hung in there and didn't do enough, while the Sharks did do enough and would go through to their first grand final since 1978. Moving on to the talk. So Super League, yes, it was a different time. I'll give a shout out to the Rugby League Digest. Go check out their work. They have an all-encompassing, exhaustive, and great listen. I'm into that. I'm a rugby league and just all-round nerd. Many thousands of hours of talking about the how and the why and the what of the Super League war, right back from the start. They started the 1994 season and run right the way through to 1998. So they talk about that. It's worth a listen. If you got less time, have a look at Steve Mascord's Two Tribes book, or even the Batuta Advocate did a little documentary on what that was. Super League, I was youngish at the time. I didn't go to this prelim final, but I remember watching it. It's the first time I'd watched it since then. And good to see, really. It was a different time. It kept the club alive. There's a lot of maligned talk around it. It did ultimately result in the rationalisation and all the horrors that occurred to some of the foundation clubs following that. But the Sharks can definitely lay claim to that. So the sides involved, new teams were Hunter Mariners and Adelaide Rams. It was built around the Broncos, the Warriors, and the Raiders joining, along with the Perth Reds, North Queensland Cowboys, and then Sydney teams, Sharks, Bulldogs, and Panthers. So was it the stronger quality of the two, comparing that to the ARL, the Knights Manly grand final and the like? Maybe. We didn't have a Super Bowl to see, Knights v Broncos to see who won the ultimate 1997 premiership. But it was interesting times. Plenty of things came out, though. True professionalisation or professionalism in the game. The video referee, 0 tackle after an error, scrums being packed 20 metres out, 20 metres in from touch, creating options either side. Scoring teams kicking off after points, as I said. Players having individual jersey numbers. Anzac Test came out of that. Night grand finals. Home finals. And as I said before, the 40-20 was introduced by the ARL in 1997. Looking at home finals. So these two finals, both versus Canberra in 1997, were the first of the home finals, and obviously we would host several more and continue to win right up until that one in 2022. Whether we host any more remains to be seen, but the novelty certainly was there, and it just seemed to have a different vibe watching the coverage. There was constant Sharks, deafening Sharks chants going up, and just a real party atmosphere. Despite, if you look at the score and go 2 tries, 10-4, pretty dour game, the crowd was riding on every moment. So good on them. That definitely made a big impact. Ironically, as I said, though, Sharks hosted the Raiders at the Sydney Football Stadium. Super League had grand visions of playing all their games at big stadiums and the like, but the Hunter Mariners played out of a little regional ground up in Newcastle because they couldn't play at Marathon Stadium, and Sharks still playing out of Shark Park, Bulldogs out of Belmore, Penrith out of Penrith, things like that. So it didn't quite turn it into the glitz and glamour competition they probably wanted it to be. And would have been interesting to see where it went, but it was good for the competition that they reformed. But great to see that the NRL, as it formed in 1998 when they got back together, took that on and started branching out, having hosting of finals as well, especially in week 1. And now following about 2010, 2012-ish, where they started allowing regional sides like Melbourne, Canberra, Brisbane Warriors to host week 2 and 3 finals as well. Matt Rogers, it was his second highest point scoring season after 2000, and that doesn't include all the points he scored in the World Club Challenge, which was an expanded format, kind of like a UEFA Champions League, but a lot less exciting, let's say, with all the teams in the Super League versus all the teams in the English Super League, both Australia, New Zealand, and England all playing against each other. Rogers racked up an enormous amount of points there, but in the ARL itself, he had 14 tries. I'll just get his final points tally. It was, sorry, just a bit of delay there. He got 1997. Just reading that back there. 14 tries, 70 goals, total points of 196. His highest scoring season for the Sharks was 212 in 2000, where he got 18 tries and also 70 goals. So great work from Rogers there. He's spoken out about how easy or how much more accurate the Gilbert ball was to kick rather than the Steeden. His kicking percentage was still only 70.71%. Following seasons, like 98 was 82.35, and 99 was 74.32, 2000 was 69.31. But he said that he could get the harder shots more reliably and kick with more, I suppose, reliability and accuracy. And also the first Australian player to use a kicking tee rather than the sand. And Rogers really showed his class as a winger, as a goal kicker, as a complete package in this game. The 90s Raiders, obviously they were fading a bit there. They made the finals again in 98 before kind of falling off cliff 99, and then made the finals again in 2000. Laurie Daly departed and then went from there. This team still had Ricky Stewart, still had Laurie Daly, still had Bradley Clyde, Mal Meninga as coach. I'm not sure if they posed the ominous threat that they would have, let's say, if we played them in 1994, but still difficult opposition that between them. Brisbane were raging hot favourites and Canberra were probably second, and we're probably on the third rung of favouritism for the competition. We end up beating them 3 times that year, so that's a handy result. And twice in the final series got us through to the grand final with an asterisk next to it. So that's our final talking point here, in that making the grand final exciting. The Colour Me Black, White and Blue book by, I think it was Gary Lester, his book that was released back in 2000. The title of the Super League chapter was named No More Trip to Brookvale, which was interesting, and it focused on interviews with the players. Players like Les Davidson said that when they made the grand final, even when they lost it, it was a bit of an interesting feeling, in that Les Davidson himself said that he regarded a win for South's juniors, or that a junior team for South in the third division was high regarded because he played everyone, versus this was half a comp. And if we won the Super League grand final, would it have been an ongoing asterisk for us? Probably. Would it have changed 2016? Maybe. So probably a good thing that history worked out how it did. Brisbane's 97 premiership isn't really regarded, or as mentioned, but nowhere near as much as the Newcastle Knights 1997 premiership, which probably should have an asterisk next to it as well, but seems not to, because it's the original, while Super League was a spin-off and not quite legit. So probably a good thing that we, if you can put a spin on it, that we didn't win that and then have that constant kind of, oh no, but we won the AMCO Cup, or we won half a comp. No. When we finally won one, we won it for real. Looking at the fallout, so Sharks 10, Matt Rogers with all the points, a try and 3 from 4 off the boot. Canberra Raiders 4, Jason Croker try, Laurie Daly with that miss. The season remainder, Sharks grand finalists beaten 26-8 by Brisbane. Early try in the second half from Russell Richardson gave us hope. A 10-2 halftime score was reined back into 10-8, and then it fell away from us from there. And the Canberra Raiders were out at the preliminary finals, these 10 points of loss. Strangely, too, there was further World Club Challenge matches to come, and we will play one more match at Shark Park that year, losing to the Hunter Mariners in front of only 5,000 people in the World Club Challenge semi-final. Strange times they were. Anyway, hopefully this week we turn it around to get our 5th prelim win in our history. We are enormous outsiders against the Panthers. It'd probably be the biggest upset in at least the NRL era if we were to get up. But I hope you enjoyed this little trip down memory lane from Super League. We'll cover a few more Super League matches in the coming years as we do this Chronicle series. In the meantime, hit the like and subscribe button, and up, go Sharks.